What's good, everyone? So the question on everyone's mind, can Delta Force compete with Battlefield? Now, Battlefield is a very old franchise, been around for quite a while. First Battlefield released in September 10th of 2002, so a little over 22 years now. Kind of like Call of Duty, it's been around for a very long time. They've had a lot of games, a lot of iterations of Battlefield. Some loved, some hated, some kind of mid, but definitely a very long-lasting franchise that has had a lot of impact on the casual gaming community. But one thing that Battlefield has not had in a very long time, or if ever, besides maybe Call of Duty Ground War, is competition. And we all kind of know what happens when there's no competition within a market. I've actually discussed this topic a couple times before, but I do want to reiterate this. Because Battlefield has had no competition for a very long time, they've kind of stifled their own creativity. They don't really have to do anything different in order to sell copies of their game, or that is at least until now. Introducing Delta Force. A lot of people in the community already know about Delta Force, obviously, and now it's gaining a lot of hype. There's also the extraction game mode that a lot of people seem to really like. Is actually probably more popular than the Battlefield mode. I am personally a huge fan of Battlefield. I like that style of gameplay. I like being able to relax a little bit more and kind of just run around and shoot stuff. That's more of my style. Now, is Delta Force doing this better than Battlefield? I do think it's a little early to say if this game is going to outcompete Battlefield, level with Battlefield. I don't like the conversation of it being a Battlefield killer, because there's a lot of FPS games in the FPS game market, and they all live in harmony amongst each other all the time. There's a lot of games that compete with each other, that have the same kind of style, Rainbow Six Siege and Counter-Strike, those kinds of games. So I don't think this game needs to put Battlefield out of business or vice versa. I think both can exist at the same time. I think this is a healthy take to have. And I think both games have positives and negatives that cater to slightly different types of audiences. And that's kind of what I want to go over in this video. Not necessarily the broad, oh, is this game going to outsell this game? Is Battlefield dead now? That sort of thing. I want to just talk about Delta Force in a more focused, detailed gameplay perspective and kind of describe the game, the pros and cons of the game, maybe even give a rating for a few different aspects of the game, like the gameplay itself, the maps, the overall weapon design, the character design, all that stuff. So let's go ahead and jump into it. First thing I want to talk about is for the people that played the closed beta or were watching gameplay of the closed beta, what has changed between the closed beta and now. They've had a few maps, they've done a bunch of quality of life improvements, added a few guns, and then implemented their monetization strategy. This is going to be purely through skins. There doesn't seem to be any sort of pay to win anything, which is good. That's a plus. There doesn't really need to be pay to win for a Battlefield type game. I don't really know about the extraction mode. Hopefully they don't introduce anything like that into the extraction mode. I don't play it necessarily, but I don't want them to get screwed over either. It's kind of cool that there's two different types of games within one game. So I would like to see both avenues of Delta Force thrive. I myself have actually bought a skin. They have skins varying from $1 all the way to like $80 for a bundle. There's a lot of price points in between, however much money you want to spend. They had some pretty decent cheap skins. I bought one for this PKP. It kind of reminded me of the old Black Ops 2 skins. I really like those. They're very cheap, but also have just kind of this bright overlapping color of the whole gun, and they don't really change the gun fundamentally in any way, just kind of a cool looking skin. I always like these kinds of skins, so I actually bought this one. It was only $3. I like having a lot of options for a lot of very cheap skins, and some more expensive ones maybe further down the line for people that like that sort of thing. Now let's actually talk about the gameplay itself. This is my favorite part about FPS games, obviously. This is what matters to most people, and this is what a lot of devs are overlooking these days. Battlefield itself has tended to focus more on scale and graphics than it does the actual gameplay itself. I do like the map design a little bit more in Delta Force. Battlefield has kind of moved away from not necessarily a meat grindy type of map, but a more close to medium range style of map. In the closed beta, they had two different types of maps, only two maps, but they were two different styles. One was kind of a more close to medium range style, and the other one was a very long range with a little bit of close range sprinkled in there. I think they were kind of testing the waters to see which maps people actually liked more, and I think people kind of tend to like close to medium range in Battlefield a little bit more. Yes, there is still a desire for a grand scale. This has always been a trademark of Battlefield, the conquest mode. People like having these large scale battles on these massive maps. So I think those do still serve a purpose, and there's a desire for that within the Battlefield community. In Battlefield, they have Breakthrough. In this game, it's called Attack and Defend. People actually, in my opinion, especially me, tend to like this style a little bit more. It's a little bit faster paced. You're constantly getting back into combat, but also at the same time, because of it's so meat grindy and it's so close quarters and so chaotic, there needs to be flank routes, there needs to be alternative routes, there needs to be lots of cover, that sort of thing. And I think Delta Force does a very good job at this. Playing Attack and Defend on the larger map, I'm not really a huge fan of it. It really kind of slows down the gameplay and is more geared towards snipers and DMRs and that sort of thing. I think people have a lot more fun playing with assault rifles and more medium to close range weapons. I know this is not very creative, but I want to come up with an actual like out of 10 score for some of these different things. And as far as map design goes, I'd probably give it somewhere around a 7 or an 8. These are your more traditional Battlefield maps, so they're not really going to appeal to a lot of different people. People who are used to the Call of Duty side of things with these extremely close range maps and just very respawn heavy style of gameplay might not like it as much. And people who like the larger extraction mode fans, those kinds of people that like the big open maps might not be a fan of these maps either. They are kind of a niche, but I think it fills that niche very well, and they do a good job with that style of map. Moving on to my favorite part of this game, and probably the best selling point of this game, I think, is the actual gunplay itself. Now, there's a few things that fall underneath gunplay. That's the actual customization of the weapons, how they function, the balance of the weapons, and how the weapons work on the maps and the map style. I think overall they do a very, very good job at this. Certain types of characters get to use different types of guns. For example, the Recon class obviously uses sniper rifles and DMRs, while the Medic class, for example, has more SMGs and that sort of thing. It is your traditional Battlefield style of character design, so they use these weapons, and these weapons fill different roles that they're supposed to fit within those different character designs. And that is one thing that I'm not necessarily a huge fan of, is actually the character designs themselves. They tend to be a little bit spammy, especially with some certain characters, like the Medic character spamming smokes, or especially the Recon character spamming that little spotting bow thing over and over. You can't spam it individually, but when you have a large skill battle, there's a lot of people that are using the same characters, and they will spam the same ability repeatedly over and over again. There's been times where I've been spotted by that spotting arrow 6-7 times in a row behind cover, to where I just sat there for like 30 seconds and could not move. There's a few things you can do about this. One is just adding more characters, so there's more variety and more people using different things, so you don't get the same abilities being used repeatedly over and over again. But I don't think this necessarily will fix it, because there's just going to be a lot of abilities, a lot of very spammy abilities. I feel like there does need to be a little bit more of a reduction in the amount of them being used at one time. Whether this be an overall like map restriction where there can only be a few arrows being shot within a certain period of time, or the actual delay between each shot for each person being delayed a little bit more, or whatever ability it is being delayed a little bit more. But this does tend to be a little bit annoying. But because these maps are a little bit more close range most of the time, you tend to want to use assault rifles and SMGs more. I kind of think this is a good thing. The snipers in the game aren't really that great. They're okay, but they tend to just more cater towards the long range, back of the map style of sniping. I don't necessarily know if I agree with this. There is no like one shot capabilities besides to the head, so quick scoping someone to the head repeatedly over and over again is extremely difficult to do. In some cases, almost impossible. You have to get pretty lucky most of the time, or the player has to be relatively low. The snipers only deal like almost like 70 damage or something like that to the body, even at close range, so they're not really usable at all really at close to medium range. I myself am a huge fan of the aggressive style of sniping. In this regard, I might be a little bit biased about this, so I don't know if I really want to go too hard on this, but I personally feel like there should be a little bit of tweaks done to make them a little bit more viable at close range. I know a lot of people don't really like that, but I think there is a community there, and there are people that really enjoy that style of game, and it's not as overpowered as most people think it is. I know, I'm sorry, a lot of people don't really care about snipers that much, but it's something that I'm very passionate about. I like the Battlefield 4 style of snipers, where it's possible to one-shot someone to the chest at close range, very close range. And if someone doesn't want to be one-shot by a sniper at close range, they can run the defensive perk. So there is actually there's a counter to pretty much everything in the game. I personally would like to see something like that with snipers, but that's just me. But again though, all the weapons are really fun to use. A lot of them are extremely viable. There isn't really any clear meta. probably here in the coming next few weeks or a month or something like that, people will probably find what the meta weapon is, the AEK of Delta Force, so to speak. It's 2024, that sort of thing happens, but it does seem like almost all the weapons actually do fill a role and are good at being used in that role. The weapon customization is extremely in-depth. For more casual shooters, I tend to not be a fan of this sort of thing, but I think they do a pretty good job with this. A lot of the weapons are still relatively usable even without attachments. They're not amazing, but the attachments still do play a pretty big part in how good the weapon actually is. I recently on my last stream was using the AS-FAL. AS-FAL without any attachments is really not that great, but then once you get a bunch of attachments to kind of control the recoil a little bit more and then increase your ADS speed, it becomes a really good weapon. Now for me as a content creator, this is kind of a good thing. This allows me to make more tutorials and weapon builds and share these weapon builds with my community, and that kind of benefits me. I can create more content out of it. So again, in that regard, I'm a little bit biased, but I think to the casual viewer, sometimes this tends to be a bad thing. But again, they do a pretty good job with it. Also, one really cool feature is, again, with actually sharing loadouts and weapon customization, there is an import-export feature for your own personal loadout, so you can actually share the exact attachments and calibration that you have for all of your attachments with somebody else. For my videos and for content creation and that sort of thing, this is going to be extremely useful. I can just kind of have all my clips using that weapon at the beginning of the video and then just give my short little brief description of it and then say, hey, here you go guys, just copy this loadout and you can use my exact loadout without actually having to sit there and watch me click every single little attachment, every little calibration. You can just one click, boom, done, export. Very easy. Very good system, and I think a lot of other FPS games are probably going to copy this system going forward. I imagine with the extraction game mode, I'm pretty sure this is still possible in the extraction game mode, it's going to be extremely useful because there's a lot more at stake, so people want to use better builds, so being able to easily copy and paste very good builds is going to be a good thing. They have a lot of really cool little things with the customization as well. One thing that I really liked is they actually had a recommended loadout, so you can just go ahead and import. It's either a developer loadout or actually sometimes even a streamer recommended loadout. I think this is pretty cool. They're introducing a lot of quality of life features that kind of encourage people to get creative and see what the best loadout is or what might fit their playstyle a little bit more. For example, with the AS-FAL, I used the streamer loadout and actually didn't really like it a whole lot. I wanted to focus a little bit more on the control side of the weapon, personally for me, so I just tweaked a few things and made my own little loadout. And the most important thing to me is the actual feel of the weapons themselves when you're using them, when you're in combat and getting kills. Is it actually fun to do? And the answer is a huge thumbs up yes from me. It's hard to describe or even show you what this is like. I recommend actually just playing the game yourself and using the weapons. You'll see what I'm talking about. They're very fun to use. They're very satisfying. It feels very satisfying to get a kill. One thing that they really did seem to focus on with this game is the actual gunplay itself, which I very, very much appreciate. It's something that's missing from a lot of modern FPS games. So as far as the weapon customization and gunplay goes, I'm going to give this a 9 out of 10. I think they did a very good job. And something that's a little bit less about the actual game itself that I want to talk about is the devs. I'm not going to give the devs a rating out of 10, but I do want to say that they've done a very good job at actually listening to the community and listening to what we actually want from a game like Battlefield. They've added a few things in that we didn't really necessarily like. We spoke up about it and they changed them. The biggest example being the bots. In the closed beta, there was a ton of bots in the game. Almost half the game was bots. It was a little bit easier to find a match because the game isn't really all that popular right now on the Battlefield side of things. But I think having bots in the game is overall a negative. It makes content less fun to watch. It makes the game less fun to play. It feels less satisfying to get kills when you know it's just a bot. The bots were also very annoying to fight a lot of the times. They would just run in random directions, crouch, 180, spin all over the place. Their movement didn't really make a lot of sense. They were kind of a weird thing to introduce into the middle of actual human players. It didn't feel natural, it didn't feel good. I'm glad they got rid of it. And if you think there are still bots in the game, I don't think so. I think they're just not the best players in the world. If you watch the bots in the closed beta and then these people that people are referring to now in the open beta, they're completely different. They don't have this weird erratic movement. A lot of people are just kind of newbie and they'll stand still and miss a bunch of shots and that sort of thing. It's a free game. It's a free casual game. There's going to be a lot of new to PC players, new to FPS game players that are giving this game a shot. I don't think it's bots. I think it's just new players. The game really doesn't have any bugs either. They've done a very good job on the macro scale of actually refining the game and making it very polished. They've done a very good job making sure there's no bugs. I don't think I've even off the top of my head, I can't even think of one. There might be a few little things that I've encountered, but overall, there's really no bugs in the game whatsoever. Now, after all this glazing that I've given Delta Force, I don't want you to think that I think this game is just a 10 out of 10 perfect game. I rated these things a little bit lower than 10 for a reason. There are a few things that I think they need to change and a few things that they aren't doing well right now, but this is an open beta. That is the purpose of an open beta, is so they can fix things. So let's go ahead and get into things that I think aren't really that great about Delta Force. The first one being the desync in the game. I know a lot of this tends to be sort of a touch and feel kind of thing. It's different with different players, different connections, that sort of thing. And like I said, there aren't a lot of people playing this game right now, so they tend to widen the range of these servers so that people from EU or China will actually get onto US servers with me, and I'll have 30 ping and they'll have 180 ping or something like that. So there tends to be a little bit of desync there. This in game, this looks like getting shot around corners, getting one-tapped by weapons that aren't capable of one-tapping, that sort of thing. This game does have a relatively fast time to kill. If you're accurate enough, you can drop people pretty quickly. And this is actually one thing that people have talked about that they don't like about the game either, is how fast you die. I see this a little bit. I tend to like games with a faster time to kill a little bit more, especially games with really fast-paced movement like this game has. I don't really like games that have fast-paced movement and a long time to kill. Games like X-Defiant come to mind. It's not a long time to kill, but it's definitely longer than Delta Force. I think it makes the game less casual and less fun. You have to really focus on your tracking a lot more, and it makes the game a little bit more sweaty. Low time to kill with a fast movement tends to be my favorite style of gameplay. But yeah, the desync can be pretty bad sometimes. Hopefully this kind of gets fixed when more people start playing the game and these servers fill up more with people from the actual region that these servers are in. You won't see a lot of these high ping players a lot anymore when that happens. If there is an actual netcode error, I do hope that they work on that a little bit. There seems to be a few things like that that happen despite ping. Another thing that you actually hear a lot of people talking about right now that's kind of becoming a hot topic with Delta Force is the skill-based matchmaking. Now there is a unranked and ranked mode. The ranked mode is as simple as clicking this little checkbox. Just click ranked and then search. Very simple. You start leveling up your rank just based off how much you play and winning games and that sort of thing. You rank up faster, obviously. But it doesn't seem like unchecking ranked actually does anything. I've heard rumors and actually heard that a content creator apparently tested this, that if you unchecked ranked in queue, you can actually still get in queue with other people that have the ranked box checked. I don't know why. This is another strange decision, kind of similar to the bot situation where it's like, I don't know why you would do this. No, people don't really want that sort of thing in the game. People want there to be an unranked mode where they can play a little more casually and just overall try a little bit less hard than they have to in the ranked mode. I do think there needs to be a separation here. Again, this is probably a player count issue. Not a lot of people playing right now. If you check and uncheck that box, that splits the community in half, theoretically, between people that want to play ranked and unranked. That further widens the gap of people able to join the same server. So maybe kind of like the bot situation, they're just waiting till more people actually play the game. I hope that they're quick with this though and kind of remove this and actually add no skill-based matchmaking for unranked play when more people start to play this game. They have been pretty receptive so far on things like this, so I do think this is something that probably will change eventually. The vehicles in this game are also really annoying. There's not a lot of ways to take them down. The regular rocket launchers that you get only do like 20 or 30 damage or something like that to tanks, and then like I think 30 or 40 to the like mobile infantry fighting vehicles. I do like using the assault character and throwing C4s on the vehicles. That seems to work pretty well, but besides that, they're very hard to take down and just kind of have free roam around the map to do whatever they want. A lot of the maps also have very weird boundaries to them. There's even an example of where you're out of bounds, but it doesn't show on the mini-map that you are out of bounds for some reason. This happens on that new Shafted map when you start going underground if you're on the defensive side.
Game, hello, please don't ever do that to me again.
It is actually out of bounds, but it just doesn't show the line. But also a lot of the attack and defend maps don't have the best boundaries. They're a little bit too wide in some cases, I think, to where the attackers can really just go on a very wide flank or just go directly to the back of the objective. I think they need to tweak the map boundaries a little bit because sometimes they're a little wonky. As far as performance goes, I haven't really had a whole lot of issues. I have noticed a few times there are some times where I get frame drops, especially in the attack and defend mode and probably the conquest mode as well. When you have a lot of people on one server at the same time, this is probably going to happen. I do hope they work on this a little bit, because on attack and defend, I'll get like 140 to 200 FPS. It kind of varies a little bit, and sometimes will drop even a little bit below that. But when I play the Blitz game mode, which by the way is essentially domination, when I play Blitz, I get like 300 plus FPS. The maps are smaller, there's fewer people in the server, it's going to have much less of a load in the game. So I do hope that they fix that in the future for people with much lesser builds than mine that want to play this game. There does seem to be some performance issues. So overall, on a broad scale, do I think this game can compete with Battlefield? Yes. What do I think they need to do? Focus on content, focus on listening to the community, make these small little changes that people want, quality of life improvements, small gameplay changes, that sort of thing. A lot of Battlefield fans have felt very neglected and unheard for a very long time, so they're looking for someone to listen. So Delta Force, just listen to your community and we will play your game. If you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like. If you have anything you want to add or anything that's bothering you or anything you actually like more about the game that I didn't mention in this video, go ahead and leave a comment down below. I read all my comments. Make sure to subscribe if you want more content like this. I have a lot of plans for videos that I want to do on this game. I'm having a lot of fun playing it. I can't wait to make more content on weapon builds and that sort of thing. So yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next video.